The creative flow. What does it do for you? It's more than you think. It's your greatest problem solver in your life. It's the key to your joy and happiness. And it's the source of all things that are created on the planet and in your life. It will transform your life from one of boredom, struggle, and possibility to one of joy and possibility. So, and if you're an empath, it's going to help you to stop taking on the energy and emotions of other people. And most importantly, know what your true heart's desire is, or are, I should say, because you have more than one. What I have found with most empaths, if you're one or highly sensitive people, you probably struggle to know your true heart's desire because of the fact that you're picking up on everybody else's energy. So today I'm going to share with you what the creative flow is, why it's so important for you to tap into it, and what's blocking you from your creative flow, and for how do you start tapping into it. Okay, so we're going to um, get ourselves caught up here. So, hi, I'm Deepa and I'm the creative mystic, and I'm here to share with you first what is the creative flow. So, what is the creative flow? Okay, the creative flow is your source, your higher power, whatever you call it, God, Buddha, Allah, doesn't matter. It could be the universe, whatever name you call it, that creative flow, that's you. That source is your creative flow. Now, here's the thing, it's untangible, it's intangible, unseeable, but you can feel it, right? You can feel it when you're in that flow. If you've ever experienced, you know, right? When you're in it, yeah, everything's just kind of going and it feels there's like just feels right. There's this, sense of ease. Even if you're having to put out energy, it doesn't feel hard, and that's what I try to tell people is, when you're doing things, everybody out there tells you, oh, it was hard. It doesn't have to be hard, but you do have to put forth energy. So when you're in that creative flow, there's this ease in the sense of you can feel it's right. Okay. And it doesn't have to be hard, but you do have to have a willingness of what? To put forth energy. So let's go into why it's so important, because it is. I mentioned a couple of the reasons why it's so important already. The first one is it, this flow has created everything on the planet. Okay. It's when you're in this creative flow, there are no unsolvable problems. Nothing is impossible. You can create anything, and there is always a solution. Okay. And here's the most important thing of why you want to be in the creative flow. It changes your mindset. It changes your consciousness. And if you've watched any of my videos, I always talk about what's the most important thing? Your consciousness. Your consciousness creates everything in your life. Okay. It creates your life. It's all of our combined consciousness is what's creating the world. And so when you're in that creative flow, when you're in that flow of your divine higher power, whether you call it God, spirit, the universe, that flow will change your consciousness. Okay. It is one of the biggest reasons why creativity is so important. Getting into that creative flow is so important, is it starts to change your consciousness. So why is it so hard for most people to get into it? We want to understand what's blocking you from your creative flow, because it's always there. In fact, if you've ever watched Star Wars, you hear them talking about the Force, and in fact, if you've watched Mandalorian, you've seen the little baby Yoda, here sitting there, and the baby Yoda is what connected to what they call the Force, right? So they actually, and that force that's within you, outside of you, all around you, is the creative flow. They just used a different name. That's why I say it doesn't matter the name, whether you call it the creative the flow, God, the universe, it doesn't matter. You want to know that you want to tap into it. And what blocks it? The very first thing that blocks it, the most important thing. Let's quiet down Baby Yoda here. Hang on. The thing that blocks your creative flow is trying to be good, right? Trying to do it right. trying to like do this thing in a way that maybe doesn't really match you. In that trying to be good or trying to be right. And I've met people who, like, if they're not good at something within the first, few times of trying, they give up. Are you one of those? You don't want to do that. See, because you want to let go of the trying to be good and just embrace what you're doing. Okay. Embrace the process. The enjoyment of learning is what I always talk about when you're doing something new. Okay. So if you're creating art, like I create art, my spirit guides, you can see one that's in process right there behind me. You have to be willing to go through the process and go through what I call the ugly stage. Whenever I'm creating something, there's an ugly stage. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's the first block to your creative flow is trying to be good or trying to do it right. Okay. The second block that's stopping your creative flow is worrying about what other people think. Right? Been there, worrying about what other people think. Are they gonna like it? Am I doing it right? Am I gonna get a good grade if you're in school, right? If you're doing art school. But worrying about what other people think also goes on the level of maybe you're worried about, are they gonna think I'm weird because I'm doing this? I know when I started doing my art, I started with this desire to create these spirit guide portals. And I started with Yogananda and wanting to create him in a way that his energy and his vibration would like come through, you know, when people looked at it, and that he would bless you when you saw him. And I thought, but I didn't tell Soul because I was worried that they would think I was weird. So do you have that voice, that makes you go, oh, and then it stops you, because you're worried about what everybody else is going to think? Or you could be a writer, and you're writing and you're worried about trying to get published rather than just writing the best story you can write and then worry that, about the rest later. In fact, not even worry at all, because when you actually follow your heart, I say God, Divine Mother, has got the how figured out. You just have to learn how to like get in the creative flow so you can actually hear and be guided by that flow. Okay. And ultimately, what blocks your creative flow? Your beliefs and your habits. The things that you're doing now, if you don't have yourself in the creative flow, you have a belief or a habit that's preventing yourself to get into it. You most likely have a bunch of shoulds and have tos. I know I grew up that way, and I had to really start to let go of those shoulds and have tos and the beliefs of my parents. Those beliefs and habits prevent you from actually being in the creative flow. Now, what kind of belief and what kind of habit? Now, it could be a belief that you're not creative, or it could be the habit of that you have to do all the things that are the responsible things. Now, responsibility and shoulds are all defined by usually what you grew up in as a child. See, so if you're going to be doing those beliefs and habits of from before, if your childhood, I should say, then you're never going to be in the creative flow. I haven't met really hardly anybody who's been raised to be in the creative flow, unless you were fortunate enough to be raised by an artist, an actor, a musician. Those parents would probably encourage you. But if you haven't been raised by that kind of parent, your beliefs and habits are probably telling you starving artist, so that starving artist, do you want to be starving? I know I don't. It kept me from doing it. And my art teacher way back when I started doing art said, you know, he doesn't even know where that belief came from because it's not true. Okay. So those beliefs and habits, you have to start to look at which ones are holding you back and start to change them. Okay. So that creative flow. So how do you start to tap into that creative flow? Okay. Because first and foremost, when you can get yourself in it, life starts to get easier, life gets better. The number one thing you need to have, relaxation is number one. Okay. I had never connected relaxation with creativity until I started to go to do my art lessons. And my art teacher would yell from across the room, literally, relax, Deepa, relax. You got to relax when you're creating art. And I was like, oh, okay. Now, I didn't at that time understand why. I do now. I understand why the number one thing to tap into your creative flow is relaxation. Now, let me help you recognize what relaxation is and what relaxation isn't. Okay. Because sometimes people think relaxation is sitting on the couch, staring at the boob tube, sitting back, and that's relaxation. That is not relaxation. In fact, depending on what you're watching, okay, and especially if you're an empath or highly sensitive, if you're watching an action movie or something with some violence or something that's scary, okay, those movies make you tense up and you may not even be aware that you're tense. Okay. You like the big bang, you tense your body. You might not notice it, but you start to pay attention. Okay. So relaxation is about you really not just physically relaxed. You do need to be that physically relaxed, but you also need to be mentally relaxed. Okay. Spiritually relaxed. You're not in this striving mode, but you're just really allowing yourself to relax body and mind and spirit. Okay. Now, easy to say, right? Harder to do. But I want you to just right now, we're just going to cover the things you need to do to start to tap into it. And that relaxation is number one. Okay. Number two, you got to let go of trying and become aware of your oneness with the flow of the divine, of God, whatever you call your higher power, because that hanging on to that separation that God's over here and I'm over there, that keeps you from connecting with the creative flow. So for me, like what I do when I start with my creations of spirit guide portals is I do a prayer, I do some yoga postures to relax. You know, I have a whole routine I do to get myself in that flow of becoming aware of the higher power, of divine, of God, rather than me. Because when you think of me, right, what's the big block that stops you from um the creative flow? I mentioned it earlier. Anybody know it's trying to be good or trying to do it right, right? And worrying about what other people think. Those are the two big ones. There are some other things, but those are the two big blockages that stop. So you have to relax and you have to get out of that. Am I doing it right? Is it good? Oh, are people going to like it with whatever you're creating? Whether it's a book you're writing, painting like I do, maybe you create um, wood objects or you do cabinetry. Doesn't really matter what it is. If you're worried about what other people think and you're kind of in that ego point of thinking about, is it good? Have I done it right? That stops the creative flow. You're not in the flow. So you want to let go of the trying and become aware. And I always am looking at Divine Mother as a doer, as the painter. Okay. And the third thing that opens up your creative flow is you want to follow any little inkling or desire that you're getting. Okay. That's the more you follow those inklings and desires. So when you're creating something, and that's why I try to really recommend people do some kind of creative project, something you love to do. That's the first point. Okay. And as you're doing it, you have to follow the little inklings. So, like for me, I get this vision in my mind when I'm meditating of different spirit guides. And then I go, okay, I'm going to create this into a spirit guide portal. And that vision is kind of in my mind, not always planted in my mind's eye, but I have it. I usually jot something down in Procreate or something that after I had the vision, and I start to paint it. But as I'm painting, because I'm always being in that flow of connecting and allowing Divine Mother to be the painter through me, okay, I'm following any sensations and feelings I'm getting, even if it doesn't make sense. So sometimes I get a feeling to lay a certain color down and I put it down and it doesn't look so good. Remember, I had talked to you about you have to be willing to go through the process. Instead of trying to be good, just go through the process, be willing to suck to be good, okay? So, I get and I lay it down and sometimes I go, "Ooh, that doesn't look so good." But then as I continue to paint, I realize, "Oh, I'm gonna paint something over it, but it's gonna bleed through a little." And I'll see, like, there's the look I was looking for. Because I'm trying to take something from, a fifth dimension of what I visually saw in meditation and bring it onto a two-dimensional thing. Okay. So when you're in this creative flow, the way that it does works is that because you're probably thinking like, how is this going to make my life happier and more joyful and change my consciousness? Well, one of the things about how you change your consciousness is obviously you do spiritual study and you do all these different things. But if you know anything about yoga postures, and if you've ever looked at it from a point of studying it from a spiritual perspective, not going there for a workout, um, the great yogis many, many eons ago had high, I should say, came into these high states of consciousness, and then their bodies went into these positions. So the reason why you do these yoga postures from a spiritual point of view is that you put your bodies in the position to help bring out that state of consciousness. So we're trying to reverse the process. So everything that's been created in the world, right, has been come from the source, has come from higher power, from God, from the universe, from divine mother, okay? Whatever name you have, is come from that. In fact, it already exists because we're just tapping in to what already exists on the energy plane and bringing it flowing through us and then creating it with our hands or writing it, or singing it, however you do, whatever creative process you have. Okay. And so the more you connect to that creative flow, you'll start to just feel this joy come from within. And you're actually that already. The joy and peace that you seek, if you're not having it, is actually who you really are. And if you're an empath, by connecting with it, then you get connected with yourself rather than everybody else's energy and emotions, which is what happens for empaths and highly sensitive people. And that's why you may not know what your true heart's desire is. So by getting in the creative flow, you'll start to know what your true heart's desires are. And that can guide your choices in your life rather than what you're picking up on from other people. Or if you're not an empath, what you've been programmed to do is like, oh, I should do this because this is the responsible thing, or I'll make money if I get the college degree. And I am not against a college degree. I have one. Okay, I think they're great. But if you're not prone that way, or you're not wired that way, or you really have a desire to create art or be a musician, I want you to act on it now. Now, I don't want you to wait. You're never too young and you're never too old. Okay. And that's the thing, is that's a belief, that's a habit that keeps you from being in the creative flow when you think you're too young or you think you're too old. Okay. So you want to really try to let that go so that you can actually get into that creative flow. So it's easy to say, but more challenging to do, right? I know it's easy to say, relax, let's go back. Let go of trying to become aware of your oneness, follow your inklings, okay? Can be challenging to do because what? We've been trained to be tense and be doing, doing, doing. That's what makes you be tense. So if you have any kind of tension or ache or pain, you're not relaxed. You have to breathe into it. So one of the things you can really do is breathe. Okay. To let go of trying and becoming aware of your oneness with the flow of God is to leave your little self aside and let God be the doer. And the way you can follow your little inklings or desires is by listening to yourself. It's one of the reasons why I recommend meditation. It's one of the reasons why I create little guided meditations and go from there, is because the only way you can follow those little inklings or desires is to quiet your thoughts, to slow down your beingness of what you're doing in the world. Take some time to just be instead of trying to do. Okay. So those kind of some real quick, easy tips to do. So it's easy for me to give you this information, but what will change this for you is actually applying it. The willingness to do, see, and think differently. So I'm asking you, what's the one thing that you're willing to do differently, or to think differently, or to see differently? But it often is easier if you do something differently. Now, I recommend doing what I'm recommending here and get in the creative flow. Okay. And do something that you love to do, that where you're making something. It could be art, it could be macrame, it could be knitting, it doesn't matter what it is, but commit to it, because you have to start to do something different than you're doing now. So commit to that. You can put it in the chat if you'd like. I'd love to see that because what's that one thing that you're going to apply and do differently is the only thing that's going to help you get into that creative flow more. Just hearing what I'm saying isn't going to make the change. Okay. Now, maybe you're doing it well already and you were just curious, but I would love to see you make a difference in your life by actually saying, I'm actually going to apply one of the things that Deepa talked about, and I'm going to start doing it today. So, would love to, if you're watching this, put it in the chat. If you're, for some reason, been looking for a coach, looking for someone that can help you to change the way your life is and really stepping into your heart's desire, feel free to check out and take my gift of a complimentary next step connection call. Go to deepbulu.com/gift. I'd love to see you and talk with you. And if this was helpful for you, please subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you see more lives because I'm going to be doing some more lives next month. All right. Have a miraculous day. Blessings. Hey, Alberta. I just saw there was a comment here. Alberta, thank you for introducing yourself. And I didn't know you've seen me before. So thank you so much, Alberta, for introducing yourself. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in here. I'd be happy to answer them if you have one, since there actually are some people left today. So I'll wait a minute or two to see if you put anything in there. And if not, I hope you found this helpful. All right. Well, no questions. Have a miraculous day. See you in the next live. Blessings.